We do want to begin with that political drama now playing out on Parliament Hill in the wake of yesterday's federal budget, a defection that inches the Carney government closer to getting its financial blueprint passed. And it leaves the Conservatives seething and potentially helping prevent a snap election. A short time ago, Prime Minister Mark Carney welcomed Nova Scotia MP Chris to the Liberal caucus after he quit the Conservative Party yesterday.
I would especially like to thank Chris D'Entremont, the member for Parliament for Acadie, Annapolis. I'm honored to welcome him as the newest member of our government caucus.
D'Entremont joined Carney for a press conference about the budget. In announcing his decision to cross the floor, he says the Liberal plan, quote, hits the priorities I have heard most in my riding. The Liberals now hold 170 seats out of 343, too short of a majority, meaning they still need 2 more opposition votes or abstentions to pass that budget. Okay, so let's bring in Catherine Cullen, host of The House on CBC Radio, for more on this developing political story. Okay, so of course we're going to cover off the budget, but what has transpired in the last 12 hours is most certainly of note. We heard from Chris D'Entremont a short time ago. So what impact will this have on the Liberal Party and the Conservatives?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Arthi, however you slice it, this is a pretty big deal. It is not unto itself a game changer, but Mark Carney likes the word catalyze. How much of a catalyst is Chris D'Entremont for other members of the Conservative Party? I think that is sort of the question hanging over this discussion right now. D'Entremont himself, it's important, I think, to think a little bit about his particular situation. This is not someone who is new to politics or conservative politics. He was a provincial progressive conservative in Nova Scotia, even a cabinet minister, 16 years that he was in office provincially, and then a familiar face on Parliament Hill for years now as well. So this is somebody, on the more progressive end, the sort of redder end of the conservative spectrum, but somebody who spent a long time as a conservative, but who is making this decision, which he would know, again, as somebody who has been in politics for a long time, to make this leap, that it was going to have very significant political consequences in his own riding. He won in the last election by just over 1% of the vote, with the Liberals in second place. He was the only Nova Scotian MP to be elected as a Conservative. He was asked today about what was behind this decision. So let's listen to a bit of what he had to say.
Let's start with the story of how I got here. I would think over the last number of months, I wasn't feeling that I was aligned with the ideals of what the leader of the opposition had been talking about. So I've been sort of relooking at, what my career is bringing and what I can do for my constituency. So over the last little bit, talking to many of my friends in the Liberal Party, as Deputy Speaker, I got to know a lot of those members personally, ask questions, see what's going on, and understanding the point that we are in Canadian history, where it's time to actually try to lead a country, to try to make it better. And not try to knock it down, not to continue to be negative. In my case, as a Nova Scotian, we're always trying to find ways to work together to solve the issues that are important to our communities. And I didn't see it by sitting in the opposition. I saw it by being a part of the government caucus.
I mean, politically, that is shots fired, right? This is the right way to do things. Those guys that I was with before, not the right way to do things. Obviously, Chris D'Entremont needs to make the case for his own political career that he is doing this for the right reasons. The Conservatives have raised a lot of questions about this decision, pointing out that it was just a few months ago that he was campaigning against the Liberals, saying Mark Carney had the wrong vision for the country. They've also suggested perhaps this is motivated by personal sour grapes, that D'Entremont is upset about some activity around him not running to be Speaker of the House of Commons. There's some suggestion the Conservatives didn't want to see that. They wanted it to be a Liberal because of the numbers in the House of Commons, and suggesting maybe he's mad and that's why he's leaving. D'Entremont, though, really did reject. He said, it happened. I was bothered by it at the time. We moved on. And then he was asked at the end of that news conference about the idea that some Conservatives have suggested he's a coward, really called him out for making this decision. And he then, turned it back on them and said, I think they need to look inside themselves and ask why they're focused on, tearing an individual down rather than focusing on building up the country. Again, Arthi, we would remember this idea that Pierre Poilievre wasn't focused on making Canada better is an argument that the Liberals have tried to push against the opposition leader, right? That when he was talking about Canada is broken, that he was talking down the country. Poilievre has, of course, rejected that and said, no, he's talking about making the country better. But you see that we're getting back to underlying criticisms of the opposition leader, which is certainly not what the Conservatives want to be talking about today.
No kidding, because we are just a few months away from a leadership review for Pierre Poilievre for the Conservative Party. And while we've seen a lot of party members say, we support Poilievre, there's no question about that, there is a question now on whether or not, because D'Entremont raised it, are there other people who are feeling like him? And what could this mean for the Conservative Party and its leader?
Well, he says he believes that there are, and he's going to let them speak for themselves. I will say just how big this does or does not wind up being has implications. And we're really focused on what this means for the budget right now. But it's important to think that this is about, and understandably, it's consequential. We could wind up in an election if a budget doesn't pass. But this has implications for the length of this government, right? If the Liberals are able to attract now just 2 more MPs to their party, I mean, that gives them so much more latitude to do what they want going forward. You're still really on a knife's edge there. And beyond that, for Pierre Poilievre, I mean, you're right, Arthi, to say that every Conservative I have talked to has suggested that, they expect that he's going to win this leadership vote in January in Calgary that the Conservatives are holding. But this does change the dynamic. If people leave the party and if they say it is in part because of your leadership style, stating the obvious to say that does not help. So the question here is, how big of a wound is Pierre Poilievre suffering at this moment? What do the Conservatives try to do at this moment? What are they trying to do to convince other people not to follow in Chris D'Entremont's footsteps? How does all of this play out over the next few days? It has big political implications for what the government is able to do, what kinds of decisions they are able to make on behalf of Canadians, and how much they have to get opposition buy-in in order to do it. So fascinating times in politics, and definitely all eyes on West Block and the caucus meetings in House of Commons today. It's going to be spicy.
Incredibly fast-moving too, my goodness. Okay, Thanks for this, Catherine. That is Catherine Cullen. She's the host of The House on CBC Radio, and she joined us today from Ottawa.